Hey, it's Byron Morrison here, and welcome to this mindset mastery training where I'm going to show you how to get out of a reactive state so that you can stay calm and grounded regardless of the chaos going on around you. So, in case you missed it a couple of weeks ago, I made an announcement that I'm going to start doing a regular training for CEOs and business leaders on everything from mindset to performance and productivity, really showing you how you can take control and become more effective in your role. Episode number one, we focused on energy management strategies, where I showed you tips and strategies and ways to structure your days to allow you to stay energized and avoid burning out. If you haven't checked that out yet, I really advise doing so because there's so many actionable takeaways in there that you can apply today that are really going to help you take control of your life and business. Shifting our focus today, I really want to take you through how to get out of a reactive state because this is one of the biggest problems I see time and time again with overwhelmed CEOs who come to me for help. The reason being is because there's so many different things going on. Their days essentially become putting out fires, solving other people's problems, and dealing with never-ending demands. So much so that they're stuck in the trenches where they're driven by emotion or focusing on issues that are out of their control, that it takes them away from what they actually need to get done. That's why the mindset training that I'm going to take you through now is the foundation of the work that I do with my private clients in my Evolve program. If you've seen any of our case studies or our results, the reason why those CEOs have got to where they are is every single one of them has mastered this way of thinking. And it'll be an understatement to say that when I adapted this myself and I really incorporated this into my own life, it completely transformed everything from how I deal with setbacks to the way I process problems and how I feel every single day. And that's why I really want you to go through this and not just listen to it, but commit to implementing the lessons and tasks I'm going to give to you as well. Because when you do, you're going to have such a big shift in the way that you think and feel. I was actually talking to a new client about this earlier today. We were on session number 4, and he was saying to me that one of the biggest changes for him is actually this mindset training. Because in the past, he would spend his days getting pulled into problems and focusing on setbacks and things that have gone wrong. But by actually incorporating this, what it's allowed him to do is to shift that focus into solving mode, where when something goes wrong, instead of dwelling on the past or beating himself up, he's immediately looking for solutions, and that's allowed him to feel so much more in control. So, what I'm going to be taking you through today is 3 different steps. These are going to give you actionable insights into what's actually going on. And then to help you actually apply it, I've got 3 different tasks to go through as well. So, starting with the steps, the first thing I want to talk to you about is what is known as cause and effect. You see, in life, you're either at cause or you're at effect. And there's no middle ground with this. And a lot of people will learn this, they'll say that makes sense, and they'll move on. But it doesn't work because they don't embody it. Once you actually embody and fully embrace what I'm teaching you, though, that's when you're going to realize that you've actually got the power to get any result that you want. And this is why when I'm working with clients, our first step in the journey together is getting them to move from the effect side of the equation to the core side of the equation. So what does that actually mean? Well, when I talk about being at effect, essentially what I mean is anytime that you're allowing something outside of your control, whether that's other people, your environment, your problems, or anything else going on, to influence and determine the way that you think, feel, react, and behave. I'll give you a few examples. Let's say you're in a difficult meeting, there's a lot of tough questioning, and you're getting overwhelmed. That's you being at the effect of the situation. Let's say a member of your team drops the ball on a project and you just lose your temper and get really angry. That's you being at the effect of them and what they did. Let's say you have a setback in a project and you start just getting really frustrated about what's going on. That's you being at the effect of the situation. Or let's say later today, you want to go out for a run, but it starts raining. So instead, you sit on the couch and you watch Netflix. That's you being at the effect of the weather. Like I said, with all of these examples, you're allowing something outside of your control, whether that's people, environments, your circumstances, or events, to impact the way that you think, feel, react, and behave. When you put yourself at cause, though, that's you looking at the situation of, okay, this is what's going on, but how can you control your response? What can you do about it? It's all about shifting your focus from the past or everything going wrong to the present and what you need to do to move forward. Going back to the example with the run, there's so many solutions in that problem problem. You could go to the gym, you could work out at home, you could go and attend a class. But because you've been stopped by that first hurdle and speed bump, your focus has gone to what's wrong, and instead you do nothing. But when you put yourself at cause, you figure out, okay, this is what's going on, this is what I can do, and you figure out a solution. So whenever you're being an effect, that is what keeps you procrastinating, keeps you stuck in a fear of failure. And ultimately, that's what's stopping you from getting results in your life. And this is why when I'm working with my clients, the first thing we have to do is move them to the cause side of the equation. Because when you put yourself at cause, that's when not only will you give yourself the power, but also the belief that you can take back control. Because here's what you need to remember. You're never going to be in complete control of what's going on around you. But what is the one thing you can always control? It's how you choose to respond to it. And ultimately, it goes back to being responsible. And I know that this is not the true definition of the word, but if we take the word responsible and we break it down, you get response and able, as in you've got the ability to choose how you respond. It's like if I asked you right now, who's responsible for closing your eyes? The answer's simple. It's you. But if you answer differently, then you would be at effect. And it's like if you've got something you need to do, a difficult conversation you need to face, a task you need to get done, who's the only one responsible for making it happen? Again, it's you, which is why ultimately, who's responsible for getting results in your life? It's you. Yet so many people are stuck in this victim mentality where they blame everything and everyone else for what's going on. And that's the reason why they're stuck. And this is why it's so important that you recognize that there's no middle ground for cause and effect. You're either at cause or you're at effect. And any time that you're being at effect, that's when you're stuck. And that's what's going to stop you from getting the results that you want. And this is why when I'm working with my private clients, we come back to this a lot. Because whether it's looking at how they structure their days, how they navigate difficult conversations, how they deal with setbacks, ultimately it all is rooted in this idea of cause and effect and focusing on what they can control. One thing you have to understand to those, when I say that you need to take responsibility for your own actions and decisions, it's never about blame. You're not blaming yourself for your problems or what's gone wrong or anything that's out of your control. And instead, you're taking responsibility for how do you respond to it and move forward. This is huge with stuff like depression. Like the reason why a lot of people stay depressed is they're mentally stuck in the past. They're beating themselves up over what they did or didn't do. They're focusing on what went wrong and things that they can't change. And I don't want to take anything away from depression. I know it's something that I've dealt with myself in the past, and I know how crippling it can be. But a big part of the problem is you're not empowering yourself. You're focusing on all of the things that can't be undone. When you shift your focus to the future, though, that's how you can empower yourself to move forward. And it's all about shifting that focus from, okay, I can't change that, but what can I do? How do I solve this problem and actually deal with it to move on with your life? And it's the same with problems you have in your business, setbacks that you have in your team, whatever's going on. It's all about shifting your mentality to the present moment and what you need to do in order to actually shift it from the past to what you need to get done. So does that make sense so far? Do you understand cause and effect? Well, that, like I said, that's step number one. Step number two is focusing on what you want, not on what you don't want. And this is something that everyone thinks they know. Just go on LinkedIn. You see all these fluffy motivational posts of energy goes where focus flows. And while, yes, that's true, most people saying all this stuff doesn't actually know what it means. And that's why I want to actually explain it to you. You see, our brains are wired in a way that they're constantly looking out for danger. If you go back to the days of the cavemen, a good day back then would be to find some food, to get some shelter, and ideally not get eaten by a wild animal. And even though society's evolved a lot since then, mentally, we're still wired in exactly the same way. Just turn on the news. Everything's death, destruction, terrorism, war. It's all of the negative things going on in the world. And the problem with that is when you're focusing on what you don't want, that's what you attract more of. And this is why the thing you need to comprehend is right now, there's millions of things going on around you, from the feel of your shirt on your body to the taste in your mouth, sounds and smells. If your brain tried to process them all, you'd go insane. So instead, it chunks it down and generalizes it based on what it recognizes is important to you. And this is why if you ever thought of buying a new car, suddenly you start to see it everywhere. Or you get a new item of clothing, suddenly everyone seems to be wearing it. It's not that it wasn't there before, it's just that it wasn't important to you, so your brain filtered it out. But when you start bringing it into awareness, that's when you start to actually recognize it. So I'll give you a couple of examples of this. This is a little bit silly, but I want you to humor me for a moment. What I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think of anything except for a pink elephant. Don't think of a pink elephant. And what's the first thing that pops into your head? A pink elephant. And that's because your unconscious mind can't process negatives. You say to yourself, don't think of a pink elephant, and it's the first thing that you think of. So let's try this another way. What I want you to do is to close your eyes again. And what I want you to do is to imagine anything that comes into your mind is the color blue. Just blue, 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 anything blue. And in a moment, not yet, I want you to open your eyes and look around the room for anything that is blue. So do it now. Open your eyes and start looking. And hopefully this has worked because I can't see what's going on in your background. So this has failed on me a couple of times, but I should ideally start seeing some blue things. Like for me, the top of my water bottle's blue. The pillow on my couch in my office is blue. But I didn't come into the room this morning back, oh, that water bottle's blue. It's only when I start bringing it into my awareness that then is something that I'm start focusing on. And this is why you have to understand that when you start putting your focus on the things that you want, that's how you're going to attract more of them. But when you're focusing on things that you don't want, that's when it's going to sabotage you and get in your own way. Another example of this is when I'm working with my private clients, one of the first steps in the process that we do is focusing on upgrading what I call your identity. It's about getting you clear on the person you want to become so you can start pushing yourself to show up as them in everything that you do. One of the big reasons why people don't achieve their goals, though, is they just figure out what they want and then they just go back into the stress of everyday life and they completely lose sight of it. Whereas if you want to make a lasting impact, you have to keep reminding yourself what it is you want and push yourself in order to make it happen. This is why every single morning I've got a bit of a ritual that I get my clients to go through where they take some time to mentally take themselves through the person they want to become. How do they need to show up? What actions do they need to take? What does their best version of themselves look like? By mentally priming themselves for the day ahead, that can give them a whole new level of clarity and focus. And on the days that they're tired, they don't feel motivated, this can be the difference between showing up as their best version of themselves or just having a day where they're trying to get through. And it's all about that focused and intention and setting themselves up for the day ahead. Because like I said, what you focus on is going to put your mind on what you need to look out for, and it's going to directly impact what you think and feel. A perfect example is if you've ever felt anxious. When you're in that moment and all that anxious energy builds up inside you, you're saying to yourself, I don't want to be anxious. I don't want to be anxious. And what happens? You just become more anxious because you're telling yourself not to focus on it. So that's what happens. And you can start to see from this how important the language you use is, because the words that you use and the way that you talk to yourself are going to directly determine what you focus on. And that's why in a few minutes, with one of the tasks I'm going to give you, it's going to be around removing these negative language traps so that you can start actually taking control of your focus. So these are really simple principles, but you can start to see that if you don't get this right, you're going to go around in circles, problems are going to manifest, and you're not going to be able to change. But when you start actually putting yourself at cause and focusing on what you need to get done, that's when you can start actually moving forward. So that brings us to step number 3, which if you understand this, the third thing you need to do is take action. And the reason why this works and what I've gone through with you is a process to get you to follow through, because everything in life is always so much easier when you have a process to follow. And that's why regardless of the challenges you're facing right now, a lot of them could be solved by you putting yourself at cause, by reminding yourself that you and you alone has to take responsibility for getting this done, focusing on what you need to do and pushing yourself to act on it. And it's like a bungee jumper stood at the top of a mountain. The longer they delay, the more that fear builds up inside them until they become paralyzed and they can't move. Whereas they could immediately solve their problem by just jumping. And it's exactly the same for you, whether it's a difficult conversation you need to have, starting work on that report, whatever it is you need to get done, you could solve that problem right now by pushing yourself to face it. Yes, it may not take all of the issues away, and there might be further steps that you need to build on from there, but the longer you procrastinate and put it off, the worse it's going to become. And this is why not taking action is mentally and emotionally worse than pushing yourself to do it. I'm sure you've had days where you sit around procrastinating for 4, 6, 8 hours. It's exhausting. It takes more out of you than a day digging ditches. But this is where a lot of people get stuck because they're in a state of effect where they're avoiding the things they know that they need to do. And that's why they're not moving forward. And this is why it's so empowering of you getting yourself into this state of mind where whatever it is you need to face, you have to put yourself at cause, focus on what you need to do, and push yourself to follow through. So those are the 3 steps that I wanted to take you through for now. But like I said, this sounds really obvious on the outside, but the reason why this doesn't work for most people is because they don't actually implement it and follow through. And that's why there's 3 different tasks I want to give to you today, which is going to allow you to actually start incorporating this and really changing and rewiring your subconscious mind. So the first of those tasks are removing what I call negative language traps. These are the words and phrases that you're using every single day that are keeping you in a state of effect. The first is this makes me that. He makes me angry. The weather makes me sad. She makes me so frustrated. Going back to cause and effect, no one can make you feel anything. Your emotional response is always a choice. It's like if someone does something that makes you angry, they're not making you angry. You're choosing to get angry because of what they did. And most people can't comprehend this. They always blame everyone else for the way that they're feeling, but it doesn't make it any less true. And once you start taking responsibility for changing your response, that's how you're going to feel so much more in control. And one thing I need to point out with this is the work that we're doing here is not about making you immune to your emotions. Instead, it's about making you recognize when you feel a particular way and changing your response as quickly as possible. I'll give you a perfect example of this. A few months ago, I was sat on a train and there was a group of kids across from me who were screaming and shouting, and I'll be honest, I was getting incredibly annoyed. I was sat on the edge of my seat and I just kept thinking, why won't they shut up? And then I realized I was being completely at effect. They weren't making me annoyed. I was choosing to get annoyed because of what they were doing. The reality was there was so many solutions to my problem. I could look out the window. I could put in my headphones and listen to music. I could focus on my work, or I could do what I ultimately did and move seats. But because I was so focused on the problem, I was blinded to any solutions. It was only when I caught myself and realized, okay, I'm being at effect right now. What can I do about it? That I could turn it around and move forward. And that's why I said this is not about making you numb to what's going on. It's about getting you to recognize and change your response as quickly as possible. The second negative language trap is the word try. I'm sure you know the famous Yoda quote from Star Wars, do or do not, there is no try. Like you're either going to do something or you're not. You're either at cause or you're at effect. There's no middle ground here. And the problem with the word try is a lot of the time you're putting pressure on your future self, hoping that they're going to figure out a way to deal with something. It's like if someone asks you to go to an event, but you don't really want to go. So you say to yourself, oh, I'm going to try and make it happen. Well, the problem with that is you're basically saying that you hope that future version of you is either going to find an excuse not to go or is going to find the willpower and push themselves to actually do it. Either way, you're putting yourself through all this extra stress and pressure that is just unnecessary. If you want to be highly effective and you want to be in control of your own life, make a decision, yes or no. Stop saying you're going to try. If it's a yes, commit to it and follow through. If it's a no, then just say no and just remove that stress from yourself. The next one is the word hope. I hope I can get this right. I hope I can make it happen. The problem with the word hope is you're essentially saying that you're hoping that the stars are going to align, the planets are going to come together, and everything's magically going to work out. It's like someone going on a diet saying, I hope I'm going to lose this weight. They're avoiding taking responsibility for the fact that they need to eat better and exercise. And they're giving themselves an excuse to justify saying why it didn't work out. Oh, I said I hoped it would happen and then it didn't. So it's already giving them an excuse before it's even gone wrong. The next one is the word if. If I get this right, if I make it happen. The problem with the word if is you're saying that getting results is out of your control. That's why you need to change the word if to when. It's amazing how that one simple shift in a word gives you a completely different perspective and gives you a whole new focus on what's actually going on. And then the final one is the word should. We've all got things in our life that we say that we should be doing. I should exercise more. I should take more time with my family. I should prioritize sleep. The problem with the word should is there's no necessity there. There's nothing holding you to it. Whereas when you've also got things in your life that you feel like you must do, where regardless of what's going on, you find a way to make it happen. This is why if you've got something in your life that you keep telling yourself you should be doing, but you're not doing it, either you don't actually want it or it's not enough of a priority. And this is why you really need to figure out why you're not following through. Because if this is something that you don't actually want, you need to let it go. It's obviously not something that's important in your life, and all focusing on it is doing is keeping you in a state of effect. But if this is something that you really want, you have to raise your standards and expectations and push yourself to follow through. This goes back to what I spoke to you about earlier. One of the first things I do with my private clients is we figure out who do they need to become in order to create the life that they want. With that clarity, we can then reverse engineer the habits, the behaviors, the routines, the beliefs they need to take on in order to evolve into that next level version of themselves. From there, we can then figure out what are the shoulds and the musts in their life that they need to either let go of or incorporate in order to create the results that they want. Because a lot of the time, it's then going to be developing the right routines and holding yourself to follow through with the actions you need to take to get you the results that you want. So just as a quick recap, the negative language traps that you need to remove are the words makes me, try, hope, if, and should. And what I want you to do is to teach this to someone else, whether it's your partner or someone you speak to on a regular basis. Say to them, if you say these words, I want you to call me out on it, because you're not going to get this right straight away, and that's okay. The point here is not perfection. It's about getting you to become aware of when you're being in effect and the way that it's making you think and feel. One thing I can guarantee as well is you're going to go out today, and now that you're aware of these, you're going to hear them constantly, whether it's from members of your team or people in the queue in a grocery store. You're going to hear people making excuses and justifying why it can't be done. You'll hear these words and you'll be like, this is exactly why you're stuck and not getting results. And you're going to want to shake them and be like, you're being in effect. This is why you're not moving forward. Because like I said, most people don't think this way. And it's exactly the reason why they're stuck and not getting the results that they want. And this is also one of my favorite things to do with clients, because I find by about session number 3, as soon as they start saying these words, they catch themselves and they're like, I'm being in effect. This is what I need to do. And it gives them a whole new level of clarity and focus. So as I said, you're not going to get this straight away, and that's okay. The more aware you become of this, the easier it's going to be to shift your focus and take back control. So that's task number 1, removing negative language traps. Task number 2 is starting to become aware and in tune throughout the day when you find yourself being in effect. What I want you to do is to start to recognize periods in your day when you find yourself in a heightened state or you're in a state of effect. And essentially, this is times when maybe you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you're anxious, you're angry, whenever it's coming from an emotional place and you don't feel like you're at your best. What I want you to do whenever that happens is you have to force yourself to stop, process what's happening, understand what's going on, and from there, shift your focus from being in effect to putting yourself at course for what needs to happen. Perfect example is, let's say you find yourself getting really frustrated over something what's going on. Rather than allowing that frustration to take over, what you need to do is to stop yourself and be like, okay, mentally take a step back. What's going on here? Why am I feeling frustrated right now? What's going on that's causing me to feel this way? And from there, shift your focus to what you need to do about it. How do you move from the problem to the solution? And this is key, because for a lot of people, the reason why they get stuck in that high stress state is they get stuck in a state of effect. And then those emotions and problems are something they carry with them into everything else that they do. That's why it derails them. But by taking these periods throughout the day, what you're going to allow yourself to do is become far more aware of what is actually going on. And sometimes just having that understanding and recognizing that you're being in effect is going to be exactly what you need in order to move through it so that you can go on with your day. This is the first step. And like I said, with my private clients, the reason why we do this first is it allows them to start becoming more in tune with their emotions and the way that they think and feel. And then we can build on that with all the other mindset strategies and the tools and tactics to manage stress and make decisions and everything else. But before we can get to any of that, you have to get into the mentality where you can recognize where you're being an effect and push yourself to change your response. So that's task number two. Throughout the day, looking at when you're being at effect and forcing yourself to slow down and process it and shifting your response. The third thing that I want you to do is at the end of every single day, I want you to get a pen and paper or do this in a table or Google Doc. And I want you to take some time and reflect on what actually happened. And to do that, I want you to write down three things that went right, three things that went wrong, and what are the biggest lessons that you have to take away from it, and what was your responsibility in it. Now, the reason why I like this is most people I speak to, they're very good at telling me the things that went wrong, but what they're not as good at is coming up with what are the things that actually went right that day. And that's why this task is so effective in forcing you to slow down and really take responsibility for the good and the bad in your life. It's forcing you to actually slow down and reflect on, do you know what? This is what happened. This is how the role I played in it. And this is what I need to take away from it. Now, the key thing that you have to get here is your responsibility and the lessons is the primary focus here. Because if you just write down things that went right and wrong, you're not actually going to get anything out of it. But when you start learning the lessons for the future, that's how you can actually improve. As let's say, for example, one thing that went wrong is you knew that you needed to speak up in a meeting or you needed to have a difficult conversation, but you avoided and put it off. And because of that, you saw a snowball effect of not just you being anxious and overwhelmed, but also problems being left unresolved. So you can't change it. That's the way that you behaved and dealt with it. But what you do need to learn from is, okay, the next time I'm in this situation, how do I need to handle it? What do I need to do to push myself to really show up as the best version of myself? So that's an example of things going wrong. Or let's say, as something going right, you have a really focused, productive day. You get all your tasks done, you move a lot of things forward. Well, what's the big lesson there? Well, your responsibility was that you started your day by effectively planning. You took some time to figure out what you needed to move forward and get done. And that's why you were able to manage your workload and really maximize what you actually did. So therefore, your lesson is for the future and non-negotiables. You need to not start your day until you have a plan in place. You see, the reason why this is so impactful is most people live their life in the trenches where they're just trying to move forward, whereas your greatest opportunity for growth is actually in what you went through. It's a lot like an elite athlete going back and watching old game footage. By doing that, that's how they can figure out what they did, and it's how they can hone their focus and get an edge. And that's why if you want to be highly effective in your role, you have to treat it in exactly the same way. You need to take that time to really stop and process what happened, because if you don't, that's where you're going to fall into the traps of making the same mistakes over and over again. And that's why mistakes are only a bad thing if you don't learn from them and improve for the future. One thing I do with my private clients is when they're going through this tracking process and they're doing these reflections, I then get them to send them to me every single day. By doing so, I can then take a detached bird's eye view where I can break it down and look for correlations and triggers and repeating things going on that will really allow them to hone in, okay, this is what we need to prioritize and work on to help them to feel more in control. Obviously, we're not doing that because this isn't us working together. It's just a training, but I still want to encourage you to approach it in exactly the same way. I really want you to commit to doing this for at least the next 14 days. But to do that, again, you have to make sure that you make this a priority. You have to put into your diary, set a reminder every single day of, do you know what? I'm going to take 5 minutes to slow down and process what happened and create this table. It doesn't have to take long. If you're taking any more time than that, then you're overthinking it. But just getting into the habit of reflecting and dealing with these problems is going to allow you to learn so much valuable lessons, which ultimately are going to build your confidence and intuition. So there you have it. There's one of my favorite mindset trainings to go through. As I said, this is all about getting you out of a reactive state. And that starts with you becoming more in tune with what's actually going on and recognizing how much control you actually have over your responses and the things you're going through every single day. Because when you master this way of thinking, this is going to give you a whole new level of confidence where you'll be able to see it regardless of the challenge in front of you. You're going to be able to handle it and get through it. It's all about shifting your focus from the problem to the solution so that you can move forward. That's how you're going to feel in control. So if you do have any questions on this, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to answer and support any way that I can. Also, as well, with these trainings, I'd love to hear what more you want to see. I've got a lot of ideas of items I want to cover, but I also want to make sure you're getting value out of this and they're focusing on problems that you want to deal with as well. So feel free to drop me a message or let me know in the comments below, depending on where you're watching this on, of other things that you want to see covered, and I'll see how I can work it into future focus points. So I've been Byron Morrison, as usual. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next week where we dive in further on how to take control and become more effective in your role.